Welcome back. Today we're exploring a chilling case that shook Tulsa, Oklahoma in 2011. A case that still lingers in the public's memory and continues to spark debate. It is the early afternoon of June 7, 2011, and the quiet routine of a high-rise residential building near downtown Tulsa is about to be shattered by a horrific event. Residents who have just stepped off the elevator, or who are relaxing in their living rooms with the TV on low, will soon find themselves rushing to their windows, drawn by a collective gasp that travels up and down the concrete hallways. In a matter of seconds, a normal day will be marred by tragedy. A young man, Joshua Hilberling, will fall through a large window from a high floor and plunge more than 15 stories to the unforgiving ground below. Witnesses say the sound of shattering glass is so loud it's like a thunderclap on a hot summer day, and the echoes of it haunt them for months to come. The first officers who arrive stand stunned by the scene. The midday sun beats down on the sidewalk, illuminating broken shards of glass that glint like razor-sharp crystals strewn around Joshua's lifeless body. People gather behind police tape, some sobbing, others silent, as EMTs attempt the impossible. Within minutes, it's clear that nothing can be done. The victim, a recently married young man with a seemingly bright future, is gone, and it appears his death is not the result of a tragic accident. Standing inside the high-rise apartment, visibly shaken and just feet from the jagged open window, is Joshua's wife, Amber Hilberling. The client sits in a back room, absently playing on the phone. In the hours that follow, detectives piece together first impressions. Amber, pregnant at the time, is taken into custody. Rumors spread like wildfire through the building, and the police know this is no ordinary domestic dispute. The victim's identity, a U.S. Air Force veteran just returned from service, and the alleged perpetrator, a young wife known for her outward charm, will fuel a case that the media will soon latch onto with ferocity. This, they sense, is only the beginning, and as the story unfolds, the details will prove more shocking and complex than anyone initially imagined. Amber, born in the late 1980s and now in her early 20s at the time of Joshua's death, is tall and slender, with long brown hair that falls past her shoulders. Her eyes, a shade of hazel green, contrast sharply with her pale skin. Before that fatal afternoon, she is known to present a careful image to the outside world. Friends describe her as beautiful, a bit dramatic, and always keen to show off her best side. She can be quick with a smile, though some say that same smile never fully reaches her eyes. Those who spend time with her see a restlessness and intensity simmering just below the surface. She often bites her lower lip when nervous, and when agitated she rapidly taps her foot. Committing to remembering something she's granted for months, she spends more meditating alone than in public. Amber's upbringing in a middle-class Tulsa family is marked by instability. While no one in the family has a major criminal record, there are rumors of heated arguments, financial stresses, and a pattern of emotional volatility. Her parents do their best, but neighbors recall police cars in front of the family home more than once, responding to domestic disputes that never quite spill into full-blown violence, but always come close enough to rattle the windows. As a teenager, Amber struggles with authority. She is known to push boundaries in school, frequently clashing with teachers and challenging rules, though she manages to graduate. Rather than pursue a stable career path, she dabbles in various jobs, never settling on any single field. At some point, she enrolls in a local community college, taking a few courses, but rarely completing a semester without dropping out. Her social behavior suggests someone torn between desires for attention, affection, and excitement. Over the years, Amber's family worries about her mental health. There are hushed conversations about possible bouts of depression and anxiety, and a close friend suggests that Amber once saw a therapist but never followed through with treatment. Her relationships with boyfriends before Joshua range from intense infatuations to explosive breakups. She craves devotion, yet struggles with trust. Financially, Amber's life is uncertain. She often depends on others for stability. She has a habit of shopping impulsively for clothes and makeup, placing importance on appearances. Some who know her recall that she is quick to anger, and quick to cry, a combination that can be disconcerting and sometimes alarming. When Amber meets Joshua Hilberling, she is entranced by his strength and quiet confidence. Joshua, 23, is a broad-shouldered young man with warm brown hair and gentle eyes. He has recently finished a stint in the U.S. Air Force, serving primarily stateside in support roles. Having grown up in a tight-knit family, Joshua is the kind of man who always lends a helping hand and values reliability. He comes from a stable background, loving parents, siblings who are close and supportive, and a reputation for kindness that follows him through school and into adulthood. Standing slightly over 6 feet tall, he carries himself with an easy grace, and former colleagues recall that even under stress, he never raises his voice. Joshua's professional life is just beginning to take shape. With his military service concluded, he plans to continue his education, possibly in aviation engineering or business. He has dreams of opening his own consulting firm someday. Family dinners at the Hilberling household are frequent and joyful. His parents adore him and look forward to grandchildren. He is newly married to Amber, and while many who know Joshua privately question the match, few voice their concerns out loud. He seems determined to make it work. Before that fateful day, Joshua's routine includes morning workouts at a local gym, lunch with friends from the Air Force whenever they pass through town, and evenings spent exploring the city with Amber. He hopes to start a family and find a comfortable home outside the hustle of the city center. As the summer of 2011 unfolds in Tulsa, the city's skyline shimmers under a blazing sun. In this period, Tulsa is experiencing a slow economic recovery after the late 2000s downturn. There's talk of new businesses opening downtown, renovated lofts attracting young couples, and a general optimism that the city's historic neighborhoods are on an upswing. Yet beneath the surface, stress and tension remain. Some residents worry about the rising cost of living, while others keep an eye on the crime rate, which has fluctuated over the years. In most upper-middle-class circles, domestic violence is whispered about but not openly discussed. The perception is that troubled relationships are private matters, that polite society does not disturb. The tower where the couple lives, known as the University Club Tower, stands out against the Tulsa skyline. Built decades earlier, it has a cylindrical shape and floor-to-ceiling windows that offer sweeping views of the city. On a clear day, one can see the Arkansas River winding its way south, and at night, the lights of downtown shimmer like a field of fireflies. The building attracts a mix of residents: young professionals, older couples downsizing, and a few students. Safety here is considered good. The lobby features a security desk, and residents often stop to chat with the doorman. Crime is rare in this corner of the city. Before Joshua's death, few could imagine a violent act taking place so high above the streets, in a seemingly secure environment. The day of the tragedy is typical. The sky is a sharp, vivid blue, with not a single cloud. The air is hot and still. If anyone is paying attention, they might notice subtle shifts. Amber hasn't smiled much in the last week, and Joshua seems preoccupied. Local news reports later mention that a large thunderstorm is expected overnight, though now the heat is simply oppressive. Across town, cafes buzz with lunchtime chatter, and construction crews work on a new office building. Nothing suggests that within hours, Amber and Joshua's apartment will be swarming with police photographers, crime scene technicians, and stunned reporters. Those who know the couple say they meet at a friend's gathering downtown in early 2010. The introduction is casual. Both are drawn to the host's stories of military life and travel. Amber at the time has recently ended a tumultuous relationship and is searching for stability. Joshua, fresh out of the Air Force, is optimistic and open to love. She appears confident and playful. She notices him. He seems kind, reliable, safe. Their first conversation is about travel. Amber mentions she has never left Oklahoma for more than a few days. Joshua recounts base postings in different states. The meeting is brief, yet both walk away intrigued. In the coming weeks, they run into each other again at a local diner. The timing feels almost scripted. Over milkshakes and fries, they laugh about old high school antics and shared dreams. Amber is especially taken by Joshua's stability. He calls his mother regularly, which surprises Amber, whose family dynamics are more strained. Joshua sees something vulnerable in Amber, a woman who craves love and understanding. She asks Amber. Their relationship progresses rapidly. By the end of that summer, they are inseparable. Friends worry they're moving too fast, especially since Amber has a pattern of intense love affairs followed by explosive disagreements. Still, the wedding plans proceed quickly, and by late 2010, they are married. The ceremony is modest, with close family in attendance. Joshua's parents are cautious but supportive. Amber's family is happy to see her settling down, though some relatives question whether she's truly ready. In the first months of marriage, the couple's relationship thrives on excitement. They move into the high-rise, enjoying the view and the privacy. They host small gatherings, impressing guests with the panoramic sights. But cracks begin to form. Amber's mood swings become more frequent. She seems insecure about Joshua's friends and family, sometimes accusing him of not paying enough attention to her. Joshua, used to calm and structured environments, doesn't know how to handle these emotional storms. Sometimes he withdraws, which only fuels Amber's fears of abandonment. Other times he tries to placate her, buying small gifts, or taking her out on special dates. But the tension never fully dissipates, and it simmers beneath their day-to-day interactions. By early 2011, neighbors overhear raised voices through the walls. The arguments, though not constant, are intense. Joshua's close friend from the Air Force, Dave, recalls a conversation in February 2011, when Joshua admits he's concerned about Amber's temper. "I love her," Joshua says, "but sometimes I feel like I'm walking on eggshells." Dave urges him to consider counseling. Another mutual friend, Sarah, notices that Amber grows increasingly possessive, sending multiple text messages whenever Joshua steps out. Despite this, the couple has tender moments too, strolling along Tulsa's river parks at sunset, holding hands, laughing over silly inside jokes. As spring approaches, Amber learns she's pregnant. This news sends shockwaves through the relationship. Joshua's family is thrilled at the prospect of a grandchild. Amber, initially excited, soon expresses anxiety. Perhaps motherhood will ground her, or perhaps the added pressure will push her anxiety into overdrive. The pregnancy becomes a pivot point. Joshua talks about getting a bigger place in a quieter neighborhood, setting aside money for the baby's future. Amber seems conflicted, sometimes excitedly browsing baby clothes, other times crying uncontrollably, expressing fear that she's not good enough, that Joshua will leave her. By May 2011, close acquaintances note that the couple argues more frequently. Joshua's best friend tries to talk to him about seeking help. His sister calls him, worried, and suggests marital counseling. He shrugs it off, insisting that Amber is just stressed. Amber's old high school classmate, Jenna, says Amber confides in her one afternoon at a coffee shop. "I love Joshua, but sometimes I'm scared I'm messing it all up. Scared he doesn't trust me." Jenna tells her to seek therapy, but Amber dismisses the idea, changing the subject. June arrives, and the heat is relentless. The building's cooling systems hum through the night. Within their apartment, small disagreements over household chores or family visits escalate into shouting matches. Amber accuses Joshua of not loving her enough, of wanting to leave her now that she's pregnant. Joshua becomes more withdrawn, sometimes sleeping on the couch. On June 6, 2011, a neighbor hears a loud crash at night, perhaps a vase or lamp thrown in anger. The next morning, Amber cancels a lunch date with her mother, complaining of a headache. Joshua leaves the apartment for a few hours to meet a friend. He returns just after noon on June 7, 2011. By 2:30 p.m., the world turns upside down. New, winter, purple, and red. In the last hours before the tragedy, Amber and Joshua's relationship reaches a boiling point. He is thinking about the baby, perhaps how to provide a stable environment. She is stewing in fears of abandonment. The smallest remarks ignite bigger conflicts. There may have been a desperate attempt by Joshua to seek counseling, but Amber brushes it off. Or perhaps he suggests spending a few nights apart to cool down. triggering her fears. They are two people heading toward a breaking point, and all the subtle and not-so-subtle warning signs go unheeded. Let's listen more carefully and see if we can understand. At 2:15 p.m. on June 7, 2011, a loud argument echoes through the apartment. Some neighbors later recount muffled shouts, a slammed door, the sound of something heavy being dragged. No one intervenes. No one calls security. The couple's troubles remain their own. Yet this is the final warning sign. Minutes later, the argument culminates at the window. The trigger is unclear. Perhaps Joshua says he wants a divorce, or perhaps Amber accuses him of infidelity. All that is certain is that at approximately 2:25 p.m., their voices rise to a furious crescendo. The windows are closed, the air conditioner humming, but the sound of their yelling is intense. Amber may be crying. Joshua's voice may be stern. Witnesses in the hallway hear a woman scream. At 2:30 p.m., the glass shatters. The crime scene that unfolds on June 7, 2011, is both surreal and horrifying. The weather is still hot, with the sun high overhead. There's no wind, so shards of glass do not scatter far. The broken window is on a high floor, further up than the 14th floor. The official record states that Joshua falls approximately 17 floors, his body landing on a building-level terrace below. A resident on a lower floor, Mary Hastings, rushes out to her balcony when she hears the impact. She is the first to witness Joshua's crumpled body. Her scream alerts other neighbors. Within 3 minutes, 911 is called, and an operator's calm voice guides them to wait for help. Inside the apartment, Amber stands trembling, tears streaming down her face. There is broken furniture, an overturned coffee table, and a few scattered belongings. The window frame is mangled, the glass jagged where it broke. When the first police officers arrive at 2:38 p.m., they find Amber near the window, her hands shaking. Perhaps she says it was an accident, that they were arguing, that she only pushed him lightly. The officers separate her from the scene. One officer radios for detectives, while another carefully steps onto the balcony, photographing the damage and the dizzying drop below. Eyewitness accounts are limited. Neighbors heard the argument but didn't see the final moments. Still, the immediate suspicion falls on Amber. The scene suggests a confrontation near the window. There is no sign that Joshua tried to break out of it himself. The glass shattered outward, implying force from inside. Police find a few scattered personal items, Joshua's watch, a broken picture frame. They take photos, document the position of furniture, and bag potential evidence. By late afternoon, the building's lobby is swarming with onlookers and police vehicles. News crews arrive by 5 p.m. A local reporter stands outside, relaying the tragic story. A young man, recently married, has fallen, or been pushed, to his death. As the investigation begins, Tulsa police follow standard procedures. They cordon off the area around the building. Yellow crime scene tape flutters in the waning heat of the afternoon as curious residents gather behind it. Detectives start by interviewing neighbors. Mrs. Carter from across the hall says she heard heated arguments frequently. Mr. Johnson, 2 doors down, recalls seeing Joshua in the elevator that morning, looking tired and preoccupied. A younger resident, Lee, tells investigators that Amber often seemed on edge, pacing the hallways, talking loudly on her phone. Forensic teams enter the apartment that evening. They collect fibers from the carpet, examine the windowsill for fingerprints, and carefully note the trajectory of the broken glass. The maintenance staff confirms that the window, which is quite thick, wouldn't break easily. Detectives photograph Joshua's body, now covered respectfully with a sheet, awaiting the medical examiner's arrival. An autopsy will later confirm that he died instantly from blunt force trauma. Interviews with family and friends help investigators piece together the timeline. Joshua left home around 11:30 a.m. to meet a friend, returned around 2 p.m., and within half an hour, he lay dead on a terrace many floors below. Neighbors report loud shouting just before the incident. Early theories suggest a domestic dispute turned violent. Detectives interview Amber on the night of June 7. She reports hearing footsteps on the terrace early that evening and from there she claims she felt a man surprise her after he told her to yell for help. She claims they argued and that Joshua came toward her angrily. She insists she never meant to kill him, that it was a sudden, tragic accident. The detectives press her. Did she push him deliberately? She grows tearful, repeating that it was all a terrible mistake. The medical examiner's report arrives a few days later, confirming the cause of death. Experts are consulted about the window. Could a person simply trip and fall through it, or would a significant force be required? All evidence points to a deliberate push. Investigators reconstruct the room's layout. The trajectory of the broken glass and the force needed to break it suggest a violent confrontation. In the days that follow, a more complete picture emerges of a troubled marriage marked by emotional volatility. During the investigation, search warrants are executed. Police seize the couple's phones, computers, and financial records. Text messages and emails reveal a fraught relationship. Amber's messages, at times pleading for attention, at other times accusing Joshua of betrayal, paint a vivid portrait of instability. There are no direct admissions of intent, but the tone suggests escalating tensions. Police also find that Amber was financially dependent on Joshua, who had recently talked to his sister about possibly leaving. This new piece of information may indicate motive: fear of abandonment, jealousy, or desperation. Within a week, the district attorney's office reviews the evidence. On June 15, 2011, Amber is arrested and charged with second-degree murder. News spreads rapidly, making the local headlines and attracting national interest. The case appears on local TV, and soon national talk shows pick it up. Amber's mugshot, tear-streaked and defiant, circulates on social media. Opinion splits. Some sympathize with a troubled young woman who may have lost control, while others condemn what they see as a cold-blooded act. In the following months, legal proceedings unfold. Amber appears in court for arraignment in late June, her face pale and set. She pleads not guilty. A pre-trial hearing is set for the fall. Legal experts weigh in on local news segments, discussing the difficulty of proving intent in a domestic dispute that ends in death. Did Amber mean to kill Joshua, or was it an impulsive push during a heated argument? The prosecution gathers witness statements, texts, voicemails. The defense aims to portray Joshua as menacing or volatile, claims that shock those who knew him as gentle and kind. By early 2012, the trial begins. The courtroom is packed with reporters, curious citizens in both families. Joshua's parents sit quietly in the front row, holding hands, tears welling at every mention of their son's name. Amber's family appears visibly shaken. The prosecution presents a timeline of events, calling neighbors, friends, and forensic experts to testify. The shattered window is shown in photographs, and experts explain the force required to break it. They argue that Amber deliberately pushed Joshua, fueled by anger and fear of losing him. The defense counters that Joshua may have lunged toward her, that she acted in self-defense. They suggest a sudden accident. Perhaps he slipped, maybe she tried to push him away from her, not out the window. They call a psychologist who testifies about Amber's fragile mental state, her fear of abandonment, and how a sudden confrontation could have led to a tragic split-second decision. Still, the prosecution methodically rebuts these claims, pointing to the messages Amber sent and witnesses who heard her shouting. They highlight that Joshua had no history of violence, that he was planning a future for their family. When Amber takes the stand, her testimony is emotional. She cries, describes feeling cornered, terrified, and not in control. The prosecutor, however, dismantles her narrative with calm precision. They present text messages from just days before Joshua's death, where Amber threatens to make him regret leaving. Amber sobs, insisting she never meant it, literally. After days of testimony and evidence, the jury deliberates for hours. In the end, they find Amber guilty of second-degree murder. The sentencing is stern: 25 years in prison. When the verdict is read, Joshua's family embraces, weeping softly. Amber collapses into tears, her future irrevocably altered. In the aftermath of the trial, the families are left to pick up the pieces. Joshua's parents lose a beloved son. Their grief is profound and unending. The Hilberlings hold a memorial service at a local church, the pews filled with family, friends, and former Air Force colleagues. They share stories of Joshua's kindness, his quiet bravery, and his dreams left unfulfilled. His sister sets up a small scholarship fund in his name, hoping to preserve his memory by helping young students pursue their education. Each holiday that passes reminds them of his absence. The empty chair at the dinner table, a silent testimony to what was lost. In the community, the case sparks intense discussions about domestic violence and the warning signs that too often go ignored. Local advocacy groups use the story to highlight the need for better intervention strategies, urging neighbors to call authorities when they suspect abuse, or at least to check in on those who seem troubled. Some suggest the high-profile nature of the case influences local law enforcement to treat domestic calls with greater urgency. Media outlets follow the story through the appeals process, during which Amber's lawyers attempt to reduce her sentence, yet the appellate court upholds the verdict. The story does not end with the sentencing. Documentaries, talk shows, and podcasts cover the case extensively. Dr. Phil interviews Amber in prison, exploring her emotional state, her version of events. Dateline airs a special episode interviewing family members, experts, and friends who knew the couple. Public opinion is divided. Some believe Amber's version, seeing it as a tragic accident blown out of proportion. Others remain convinced she is guilty as charged, a volatile figure who let her anger get the best of her. Over time, the city of Tulsa moves on, yet the memory of that hot summer day in 2011 lingers. The University Club Tower remains a distinctive feature of the skyline. Some residents say they cannot look at it without remembering what happened, how a quiet afternoon turned into a shocking tragedy. Safety measures are reinforced. Building management inspects all windows, ensuring they meet stricter safety standards. Workshops on conflict resolution and couples therapy are offered by local community centers, supported by charitable donations, and grants inspired by this case's notoriety. Local legislators discuss whether more robust domestic violence education should be required in schools. Some push for legislative changes to make protective orders easier to obtain. Others propose mental health screenings for couples applying for marriage licenses, an idea that ultimately goes nowhere, but does provoke much conversation. The tragedy becomes a cautionary tale, and ignoring red flags can lead to devastating consequences. As the years pass, the case's legacy remains. True crime enthusiasts debate the nuances online. Comments on YouTube videos speculate on what really happened in those final seconds before Joshua fell. Joshua's family eventually channels their grief into activism, speaking at events aimed at preventing domestic violence. Amber, serving her sentence, is periodically in the news for appeals or prison interviews. The story stands as a reminder that beneath the veneer of normalcy, hidden conflicts can erupt into violence without warning. We reflect now on what this case teaches us: the importance of recognizing warning signs, of not turning a blind eye to escalating tensions, and of seeking help before it's too late. So many people came close to intervening, but ultimately did not. The legacy of Amber and Joshua Hilberling's tragic story lives on in Tulsa's collective consciousness, influencing how people view domestic disputes, mental health, and the fragility of human relationships. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more true crime stories. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Do you believe this was a deliberate act or a tragic accident fueled by fear and instability? And if you're interested in cases with similarly complex dynamics, you might explore the stories of Susan Wright in Texas or Larissa Schuster in California. These cases, like Amber's, challenge our assumptions about what can happen behind closed doors. Your thoughts and discussions help keep the conversation going, and as we examine these stories, perhaps we become better equipped to recognize the signs and prevent future tragedies.